Good evening. This is Doug Reinstein. We're going to wait a minute or two. I know we had a slight issue with the Zoom link that was posted on our social media page, and I know a couple of people are still joining. So just give us another minute or so and we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. Can I get a motion to return from executive session?
So moved.
Motion second. We are back.
Second.
Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. I have a couple of introductory remarks tonight before we get into the bulk of the meeting. First of all, as I was preparing for this meeting last night, I received 2 emails from residents in the community that I wanted to share, and both of them have to do with the performance of our superintendent, Dr. Varley. And I thought I would just read them briefly, as I wanted to, on behalf of the entire board and frankly the entire community, thank Dr. Varley for everything she has done in a very challenging time. The first one said, Dr. Varley, I just wanted to commend you for how well you've been handling this unprecedented situation, all while being fairly new to the district. You've held your ground, communicated clearly, took emotion out of the equation, and put the students first. Extraordinarily trying times to be an administrator, and I appreciate all you're doing to keep us moving along. This is from a parent who has a 7th grader and a 3rd grader. I got a second email about an hour later from a person who has 3 children in our school and said, Dr. Varley, I want to thank you for all the information and updates you've been providing. I have 4 children in the Brook Heights Public School, in Mary Kay McMillan, Mountain Park, and CMS. You and your teachers have done a wonderful job from the very beginning of the school year to the present day. Everyone's hard work is greatly appreciated. So Dr. Varley, I wanted to thank you for everything that you've done. I know I just got these 2 emails. I know there are others and many more who would want to thank you for everything you've done. So take that as a small token of the community's appreciation and the board's appreciation for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Second, I wanted to make a special call out this evening. As everybody knows, we have an outbreak of COVID at the high school, and there are 2 people on our staff there who have literally been working around the clock to do everything we can to keep our students and our staff safe. Ashley Janasco, who's our Director of Guidance, who leads our pandemic response team, and Jean Ringwood, who is our school nurse. And both of them certainly get our extreme gratitude and thanks for not just working days, not just working nights, not weekdays, but weekends, ever since last Tuesday when we got the first notification. And they have done everything, working with our staff, working with our county officials, with the Department of Health, with the district, making hundreds and hundreds of calls, all in the best interest of trying to keep our students and our teachers and our entire community safe. So Ashley and Jean, I don't know, I didn't look at the participant list to see if you're on the call tonight, but thank you on behalf of everybody for everything that you've done. I know your job's not over, as we're not through this by any means, But again, and I know there's plenty of people on your team as well. I'm quite sure that it's not just the two of you. I'm sure it's a team effort. I know there's other child study teams, there's athletic staff. There are multiple people who are going above and beyond. But I know from talking to Dr. Varley that the two of you have really done that. So again, you have our thanks. A note about tonight, we do have a couple of presentations. Obviously, in the superintendent's report tonight, she will share an update about the COVID situation that's in the school community. And I'll share many of the facts, dispel some of the rumors and some of the misleading information that I've seen shared, that's been talked about also on social media, and what our going forward plans are. As promised, we are going to have a presentation titled Curriculum and Instruction During a Pandemic. Both Mary Beth Kopaz and Scott McKinney will be sharing how we are looking at education and the academic gap, as well as we have a diversity presentation. We'll be talking about the diversity committees in our schools, what's being done, and you'll hear from a number of people. I'm also excited to announce that tonight that we are partnering with the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council. And in less than a week, on Wednesday night, November 18th, the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council has invited us to their next listening session. So it's a public listening session focused on diversity in the Berkeley Heights Public Schools. It will be Wednesday night, November 18th at 7 p.m. There's already been an announcement from the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council. I saw that released today. Dr. Varley will be sharing that information as well with the school community and others. So we look forward to anybody who wants to discuss diversity. It's truly a listening session. They've had a couple of listening sessions before. We've had a number of great conversations with them in partnership, and we're looking forward to partnering with them next Wednesday night. My final announcement is I will share an update regarding the Board of Ed election results to date. These are the tallies as of tonight. Joy Young has 3,635 votes. Robert C. and Shuley has 3,094 votes. Saiba Garvey has 2,278 votes. Ramya Kastori has 1,857 votes. And Peter Chang has 1,386 votes. With that, can I have a recommendation to approval of the minutes from our October 8th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those minutes are now part of our public record. Donna, correspondence.
We received many letters from the staff regarding COVID concerns and moving to Plan A. We received an email from Mr. Rinaldi regarding attendance policies, another email regarding the transparency and Oprah processing. We received letters from the elementary staff regarding reentry of school, and that all of the correspondence are listed on the agenda. We've also, I think there are over 50 letters from the staff regarding moving to Plan A. We also included our Oprah requests, and there were about 12 new Oprah requests.
Okay, thanks, Donna. So again, we have a large number of similar letters from the staff. I think it totaled, it's close to 60 now of those letters. And for those that might have not been on our last meeting, going forward, we will now be publishing in the correspondence all the Oprah requests that the school district receives. Okay, with that, I am going to grab our two students. We're going to make one slight change to our agenda this evening, in that we're going to have our students speak first. So Emily is there. And I just have to find Thomas. Good evening, Emily. Hang on one second. Uh, Okay, welcome to our students. Emily, since I got you online first, we'll start with you. Good evening. How are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Great.
So I'll just speak a little bit about the sports. So even with everything up in the air at the moment, there's still hope that there may be a few games left in some of the seasons. As of now, the seasons have been going very successfully. Football ended up winning the title of conference champs and ended with a 4-1 record. Girls soccer has a 4-4 record and are awaiting the news if they're allowed to compete in the state competition. Boys soccer ended their season with a 5-2-2 record. Field hockey is finishing with a 3-4 record. So it's great seasons for all. Winter signups and interest meetings are beginning for fencing, wrestling, track, and basketball. Many are anxiously awaiting the decisions regarding the next season. Additionally, the students are excited to hear about the new possibility of watching the sports online through a live broadcasting channel. The specifics are not yet known. However, the idea, while indoor capacity is at a low, could keep the GL spirit alive. And then as for the new schedule, even though it's only been here for a few days, it has been working very well. There's been many positive opinions on the progression. And in my opinion, the days aren't as tiring and stressful and allow for better learning environment. As well, the lab addition after lunch allows for the extra time desperately needed for science and AP classes. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Emily. And you spared me one of my questions, which was going to be how's the new schedule going, which is great. Thanks for talking about that. Thomas, good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Want to share your report?
Yes. With sports being temporarily put on hold at GL, many students have taken a greater involvement in clubs. Model UN held their introductory meeting recently and is now working with members to assign them to different delegations for upcoming conferences. Math League held their second competition of the year this past week, and Spanish Club is holding Cena y Cine, dinner and a movie, this week. TSA held their first meeting of the year where they explained to new members the events of the club and future activities. Science Olympiad updated members that there will only be a state-level competition, not a regional one, held virtually in March or April. Throughout November, GL is working to spread awareness of various cultures, groups, and people. Guidance counselors have posted information to students about the various holidays occurring around the world this month, including Day of Tradition celebrated in Argentina, Transgender Day of Remembrance celebrated internationally, and Diwali celebrated in India. The Understanding Asian Cultures Club is also working to spread awareness of Diwali by preparing a video that will teach others about Diwali and even feature individuals celebrating the event. Yesterday, the National Honor Society offered membership to qualified juniors and seniors selected by the Faculty Council. The National Honor Society now joins other honor societies such as Science Honor Society and the Math Honor Society, Mu Alpha Theta, who have welcomed new members and are now preparing for a formal induction ceremony next month. Student Auxiliary is supporting history teacher Miss Ranith in her Ranith's Family fundraiser Virtual 5K, which is raising money for Miss Ranith's daughter who is currently battling cancer. The month-long virtual event allows for people to walk, run, or bike to support the family's living and medical costs.
Great. Thanks, Thomas. Any questions for our student representatives?
Emily, real quick, you said what was the service they're going to do for the viewing the team sports?
So Mr. Scara said that they were trying to create a video program where they're going to record and live record the sports teams and the games so you can watch them online because there's no room, obviously, and the capacities are lower for the sports arenas.
Thanks.
Are there questions for our student reps? Thomas, how about your thoughts on the back to the revised rotate and drop schedule?
Yeah, I like Emily, greatly enjoy it. I know I'm talking to other students. I think there was an overall very positive response in us being able to choose this new schedule. So I think that made students feel very empowered. And I like how the afternoon sessions are not as kind of compact as they were before, because I know teachers were having a very hard time truly maximizing that time, as they were so used to having an hour to teach a class. But when you compact it down to 30 minutes, they were still working it out and they were starting to figure it out. But I think this ultimately is the best. And when we return back into in-person, this this will maximize our time meeting with teachers.
Other thoughts, Emily?
Other than it's just more, it's easier to remember because it's back to the rotation and it's only a 4-day rotation schedule rather than the 8-day we had. I know I always got confused on what was when and where. I always had to go on power school for the schedule. So now that it's back to the normal schedule that we've been used to all through high school, I feel like it's much easier and it's way better for the students and the teachers.
And Emily, how about thoughts now that GL is all remote and has been for a week now, will be for one more week? Thoughts and reactions around that?
I think it's going well for the time being. We did it all last year and I think everybody is kind of used to being online now and they know how to maximize like the learning capabilities of being at home. And with the new schedule, I feel like it's an easier transition as well, just because it's a new schedule and they're just going at home. So it's not as like stressful.
Great. Any other questions for our student reps? Okay. Emily, Thomas, thank you very much. Have a good rest of the night, and we will see you again shortly. With that, I will turn over to Dr. Varley for her superintendent's report.
All right. The last several weeks have been very challenging as the district has been trying to deal with the fallout of the COVID-19 outbreak that was ignited by student parties over Halloween weekend. As of this morning, we have 48 students in the district who have tested positive, 43 at Governor Livingston, 4 at CMS, 1 at Mountain Park. The K-8 numbers have not changed since last Friday. In addition, there are 297 Governor Livingston High School students who are quarantined due to coming into contact with a positive case. I want to make sure we understand that GL is remote and not quarantined. People who are quarantined are not allowed to leave their house. The majority of GL students are able to leave their houses as they did not come into contact with a positive case. There are also 48 K-8 students who are quarantining due to having a sibling in school who has tested positive. And finally, there are 68 staff members who are currently quarantining due to coming into contact. I also would like to reiterate what Mr. Reinstein has said and thank Dr. Janasco and Ms. Ringwood, Mr. Nixon, and the district pandemic team. They did incredible work in contacting each one of these families over the course of the last week. For those of you who have been following the reports on the number of district cases, there was a drastic increase on Tuesday. This increase was due to a delay in reporting from the Westville Department of Health, which services Mountainside. Berkeley Heights receives its reports from the Union County Health Department. The vast majority of our cases are a direct result of the several Halloween parties. However, we are finding that some are community spread positives. This means that an individual who was not at the Halloween party contracted the virus during the asymptomatic spread from a person who had attended the parties. As of right now, we know of no cases in the schools that were contacted prior to the Halloween parties. I realize that many people are questioning why the district isn't moving all students to remote learning. Right now, the data does not support this decision. All 5 of the K-8 students were part of cohort B who tested positive for the virus after their last day of school on October 30th. When this timeline is combined with the fact that there have been no further positives in the K-8 population, it means that the student population has not been in contact with these students since they tested positive. We know that the students are best served by being in school, and we know that the spread of the virus is minimized by plastic barriers, mask wearing, and somewhat of social distancing. For these reasons, and until the data changes, we are planning to keep the K-8 schools open for in-person instruction. We are hopeful that we will be able to return Governor Livingston High School to in-person instruction on November 19th. However, this decision will depend on the number of Governor Livingston High School students who are still positive at that time and if the rate of the positives are increasing or are decreasing. I want to reiterate that students in school who maintain a level of social distance and wear masks are safe. Sad experience has taught us how quickly an outbreak can spread. The consequences of poor choices and relaxing our guard can be devastating. With Thanksgiving fast approaching and college students returning home, please be sure to social distance, wear your mask, and remain vigilant. We are working hard to keep students safe and schools open, but we cannot do it without your help. As I'm sure you're aware, this past Thursday, the district received a screenshot of a vile racist and homophobic Instagram account using the Governor Livingston High School logo. This is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. The GL administration is continuing to investigate this bias incident, and we have turned over all information to the police department. The district has been working hard to make sure that all students feel safe and included. While it is disheartening to think that one or more of our students would make an account that strives to divide us, we will not let it defeat us. Instead, I would like to focus on and commend all those who had the courage to stand up and say that these actions are unacceptable and are not the values of our community. There are 2 presentations scheduled for this evening. The first is now a very timely presentation on the District Diversity Initiative. It is my hope that everyone will see the proactive steps that the district has been taking to address these issues. The second presentation focuses on the district's instructional efforts during the pandemic. On a lighter note, following the presentation, there will be a BOE discussion about snow days. I am of the opinion that snow days are one of the joys of childhood. There are 3 snow days built into the calendar, and I would like to recommend that these 3 days be retained in the calendar. If we go over those three, none would be added. If we do not use them, they would be returned at the end of the year as per our normal past practice. Now I am going to turn it over. I think Mr. Rafferty or Mr. Scara, you have our diversity presentation. We have 3 students who are in the audience who will need to be promoted as well. I sent those to Mr. Scara and Mr. Reinstein.
I got it.
Okay. So as you see on the screen, we are going to give a highlight of what we have been doing with our Berkeley Heights Public Schools Diversity Committees. If you will take a look at the second slide that has the structure of the committees, we have the District Diversity Committee, which is headed by myself, Mr. Hopkins, and Ms. Kopaz, who are also presenting with me tonight. At the end of last year, the district wanted to spend some time focusing on all children and faculty. We met with members of the SAGA Club, which is Sexuality Awareness and Gender Awareness. And after that, we wanted to focus on race, culture, religion, as well as mental, physical disabilities and sexuality and gender. Thus, the creation of the Berkeley Heights Public Schools Diversity Committee. This fall, we created our GL, CMS, and elementary diversity committees, and then the action teams for each building. On slide 3, you will see our district mission statement. The mission of the Berkeley Heights Public Schools District Diversity Committee is to support the GL, CMS, and elementary level committees in celebrating the diversity of our community and by fostering inclusiveness and acceptance through a three-tiered approach: celebration, communication, and education. One of the items that we are well aware of is that our staff does not truly reflect our student population. In April, we were slated to attend a job fair at Montclair State. However, that was canceled, like most other things, due to COVID. We have now joined forces with Teachers College of Columbia, where we are able to send our job postings through their network. That will give us access to a more diverse candidate pool. If you look at slide 4, the District Diversity Committee members, In our committee, we have district administrators, a Board of Education member, supervisors, parent and community members, and teachers and students. We have had our first meeting with without the teachers and students, but our next meeting will have teachers and students. Currently, our district committee has myself, Ms. Kopaz, Mr. Hopkins, Ms. Penna, 4 parents, and soon we will have teachers and students. If you look at slide 5, you can see that our purpose is clear. We want all students to feel safe and secure and included. This is a place of inclusivity, and we, the Board of Education and district, demand that. So I will read this for you. The Berkeley Heights Public School Diversity Committee will serve as a forum to discuss and, where necessary, coordinate building level initiatives, plan larger scale community-centered events, and meet to hear district level community concerns related to diversity, equity, and inclusiveness issues. In addition, the district level committee will liaise with the Berkeley Heights Township Diversity Committee and the Board of Education. Like Mr. Reinstein said, we will be working with the BHDC on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for a listening session. I am now going to turn it over to Mary Beth Kopaz on slide 6. She's going to talk about the District Elementary Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here to speak to this important work and the work that we're doing in the elementary schools. I really would like to celebrate and highlight all of the work that's being done. I am the chair of the District Elementary Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And on the next slide, you'll see our committee members. They include, of course, me, principals of all of the elementary schools, parents and community members. If we could move to the next slide. There we go, thank you. Teachers, specialists, and we will be including students as the year goes on. We have this elementary diversity committee that meets every other month, and then there are what we call action teams, and each building has an action team. The larger team discusses ideas and creates plans, and then the building action team puts the plans into action. They're doing the really important work that's taking place in the buildings with our students, staff, and our families. On the next slide, or the next 2 slides, I should say, you'll see our goals. They are to promote and celebrate diversity, inclusion, multiculturalism, and cultural responsiveness through various mechanisms, to provide all members of the community with a supportive space and tools to learn about and discuss, ask questions about issues and topics in a safe environment. We want to facilitate communication between all members of our community through discussions, questions. If there are issues, they have a place to be brought up. We want to collaborate with other committees along with staff and parents in an ongoing pursuit of an inclusive and diverse school environment. On the next slide, our goals are to design specific systems to ensure that every child has an equal chance for success. Specifically, we want to work on curriculum design, program design, and professional development. We're committed to creating environments that are kind, open-minded, accepting, loving by creating consistent goals and plans to achieve those goals. We want to create accountability for the implementation of our diversity and inclusivity goals, and we want to serve as a liaison between parents and the greater school and district communities. On the next slide, there's just a small sampling of the work that's taking place actually every day in the elementary schools. Mary Kay McMillan has a community celebration site that they add to on a regular basis. It's part of their website. We have what's called monthly precepts. Those are our themes where lessons, activities, and celebrations are built around those precepts. And one of the precepts is right there. It's because we're different that each one of us is special. We build lessons around literature. So for example, we use Todd Parr's stories, and some of those titles are It's Okay to Be Different, The Feelings Book, and Be Who You Are. We have culminating monthly celebrations around those precepts, around diversity and various traditions. Our weeks of respect have been ongoing. We have Students' Heritage and Diversity Day. It was really an amazing celebration that took place where students created PowerPoints and slide presentations, brought in artifacts from home to celebrate their culture and their heritage, and they shared it with classmates and other classes virtually. October was our Hispanic Heritage Month. This November, we have our Diwali celebration and cultural arts program scheduled, and we have character education and social and emotional learning lessons ongoing. They're built into our curriculum, and as I said, they are ongoing. And then tomorrow actually is World Kindness Day. So I want to say happy World Kindness Day. And those are just some of the important things we're doing in the elementary world. Thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hopkins, and he will discuss the GL and the CMS diversity committees.
Good evening. The GL and CMS diversity committees are mirrored in structure the same way that the elementaries are. There are 2 administrators, 2 students from each grade, 2 parents, and 2 teachers on the committees. The most important thing that we're doing at the GL and CMS diversity committee is empowering our students to take ownership of this initiative and to communicate our values as a community. And to that end, I'm going to turn over the presentation to 3 of our students on the GL committee, Mackenzie Pierce and Sarah Fajardo, who are our senior reps, and Alyssa Pradhan, who is a junior rep. So Mackenzie.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Mackenzie Pierce, and as we said before, I'm a senior at Governor Livingston. Sarah and myself are so proud to be here and explain our goal of being involved with the GLHS Diversity Committee. Sarah and I are co-founders of the former Student Activism Club, now GL Unfiltered, and we are excited to further our efforts for social justice through the Diversity Committee. Throughout our time here at GL, Sarah and I have firsthand seen the lack of empathy from the student body. The most recent event, as mentioned before, taking place last weekend with a hateful Instagram account tied to GL, including bullying based on racism and sexuality. Instances like these are disappointing to see time and time again, and we are confident that this committee will show that such instances are unacceptable and do not reflect the values of our school or community. The goal of the GLHS Diversity Committee is to embrace awareness and take educational action with the help of our members. By partnering with administration and faculty, along with parents and students, we are setting up action teams to address different aspects of GL's diversity. This includes working to create a Jewish student group and working alongside the pre-existing groups Saga, Understanding Asian Cultures Club, GL Unfiltered, and other groups. We feel that through the incorporation of these action teams, community events, roundtable discussions, and guest speakers, we will be able to provide proper education and steps towards equality and inclusion, not only at our school, but also throughout the district. Columbia Middle School is also following through with a similar program, and our hope is to work together on projects to emphasize the importance of diversity and inclusion. CMS has scheduled its second Diversity Club meeting for next week, Monday, November 16th at 2 p.m. They are excited to report that they have established our first action team, which will be establishing an LGBTQ+ organization at CMS that will develop opportunities to educate the school community while creating a safe place for students to have conversations about difficult topics. There are a number of students already who have interest in participating in this action team and who have lots of great ideas and energy. I'm going to pass it along now to Sarah to talk about what our diversity committee has achieved so far and our upcoming plans.
Hi, everyone. As Mackenzie said, my name is Sarah Fajardo, and I'm also a senior at Governor Livingston. As the other 12th grade diversity committee member, I'm excited to share that we have already had 2 successful events, including a Hispanic Awareness Month celebration through the Guidance Department and a bullying awareness activity on Unity Day, with the help of the GLHS Best Buddies Club. We are currently planning both a movie night and book club for staff, students, and parents. We will watch a movie or read a book, recognized for its inclusive message, and have a discussion session afterwards. The first book we will be reading is Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, which will be in February at the start of Black History Month. We are grateful to the Berkeley Heights Education Foundation in supporting this effort and our continued efforts. We feel this is a great opportunity to educate our community and have a good turnout. Mackenzie and I feel that this event and the Diversity Committee as a whole will bring long-needed change by promoting diversity and sensitivity in the whole community to make GL a welcoming and inclusive environment. We are so excited to continue creating and planning events, diversifying curriculum, and focusing on immediate actions to improve GL culture to have a long-lasting impact on our school. I would now like to introduce GLHS Junior Alyssa Pradon, who will be speaking about our next activity, the Understanding Asian Cultures Club Diwali activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Alyssa Pradon, and I am a junior at GL and a member of the Diversity Committee. So in February, a few friends and I had successfully established the Understanding Asian Cultures Club, also known as UAC, with the purpose of educating the school community on Asian cultures and celebrating them as well. We identified the need for UAC due to the lack of Asian representation that we saw and felt that it was up to us as a student body to take the initiative and celebrate our diversity. That being said, our upcoming event is a celebration for Diwali. The main part of our plan is a video that explains what Diwali really is. We want to feature students and parents or faculty if interested in the first part of the video to share information about Diwali to inform GL more about the holiday. For the next part of the video, we want to include clips and photos of the different ways that Diwali is celebrated through visuals of traditional dance, religious rituals, food, traditional dress, and more. To gather and compile the responses, we have sent out information and a Google form where students and faculty can send submissions through. The other component is to engage everyone in an arts and crafts activity involving creating a diya, which is traditionally a clay oil lamp used to hold candles that are placed in various spots around homes during Diwali to symbolically rid darkness with light. I'm honored to take part in the celebration of Diwali and incredibly grateful for this opportunity. As a South Asian American and a Hindu, it's fulfilling to see myself represented in the communities that I'm a part of, and even more so that I can take an active role in celebrating my own identity. With the inclusion of the Diversity Committee at GL, students of all communities now have the chance to achieve the representation and celebration of their identity. Students can assume a more active role in taking the initiative to celebrate the diversity, and I'm proud to be part of an educational system that is vocal and willing to help make school a more welcoming and inclusive environment for students from all backgrounds and walks of life. Especially in current times where there's evident divide and polarization, I believe that the efforts to educate the youth and welcome diversity is undeniably a step in the right direction for a better future. The Diversity Committee not only helps celebrate diversity, but also gives us a chance to share our stories and identifies what can be changed, fixed, and done to eliminate prejudice and discrimination. During the discussions that we've had so far, I feel like my voice is heard and that the committee really does depend on students to propel its mission. We have been able so far to address key issues and approach difficult topics that generally, in my experience, have been left untouched. And we're actively working towards change, including in the curriculum. So as a female Asian American junior, I feel a sense of pride as my peers and I help lay the groundwork for a united future for the younger generations to come. I look forward to achieving much more through the committee over the course of the next 2 years. And thank you so much for the time tonight.
Thank all three of you for attending tonight. I really do appreciate it. Thanks to Mr. Hopkins for organizing it and Ms. Kopaz for working with me on these presentations and these committees. Do any of the board members have any questions of Ms. Kopaz, Mr. Hopkins, myself, or any of the students?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Not specifically to the students. I think what you guys are doing is great stuff. But as I'm listening to you, as a board member, I'm not sure I have a clear picture to put a lot of this in context in terms of, what our school community looks like from a racial and an ethnic perspective. I know the statistics are out there, but I don't recall, it's ever being presented to the board. I mean, I recognize that our town is becoming more diverse. We have a growing Asian, Hispanic population. We have a small African-American population, but it's more anecdotal. And it would be very helpful to me to have a clear picture of what our, changing school community looks like as we, embrace a lot of these initiatives, which I think are wonderful.
I can definitely get you the numbers of our differences as far as race are concerned. I think what we are.
I mean, it's pretty obvious to me when I'm handing out diplomas.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
but
you
we
see the
also.
changes, you see the changes, but I think it's important for us to, to have that picture of our community and how it's changing.
I just want to make sure we understand too, diversity just doesn't mean race. We
I
are also
understand.
discussing mental, physical disabilities, sexual orientation, gender, and religion. It's across the board. Like, want to make sure everyone's included. We want to be a very inclusive district.
I understand there's limitations to what, I'm talking about. And then I guess the second thing I would say is, though, I think it's terrific that we have this emerging or new relationship with, Columbia Teachers College. I totally agree. That's a terrific avenue for us to reach out and hopefully get a more diverse pool of applicants. However, that said, I do still think that I would like, as a board member, to have a better understanding of what our current hiring practices are. And if they are not memorialized through policy or procedure, I think they should be. And I'm not suggesting, I just want to be very clear, and I'm not suggesting we go for quotas or anything remotely like that. But I do think that as part of our procedure, we should have it documented that we are looking for the broadest, most diverse slate of qualified candidates that we can for teaching and supervisory positions. And I know I've asked this before. It is, you've got a lot on your plate, especially with COVID and these outbreaks. But at some point, I would really like to, I would like to request that we have a presentation on our current hiring practices and review those procedures.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you. That's all.
I'm sorry, I have a question to our students, if that's all right. First of all, I think we all love to see when students take the lead on, especially in such important topics. So I applaud you. I know you have a lot going on in schools, so I really think it's wonderful to see the next group of leaders, starting to bloom here and really take upon responsibilities of adulthood. I'm wondering, have you surveyed your peers to see what they think are concerns within the school system? Just to get feedback from them, what do they think is going on there? To any of our students, or if they feel like answering them.
Well, Sarah and myself, as I mentioned briefly before, we created the Student Activism Club at GL. So that was like one of the first instances where our school was taking direct action at social justice. And since it's a more political club, we're dealing with a lot of issues that a lot of people aren't often comfortable talking about. So for gaining members and seeing how many people are interested, we've branched out a little bit more into the community as well. And I feel like our growth into the community has been a lot more effective as well in reaching our student body. I don't think we've ever done any surveys or anything like that specifically. However, we have been extremely inclusive in all of the Understanding Asian Cultures Club, GL Unfiltered. And I feel that students that really want to be involved are either already involved or they're in contact with us and they've shown their interest in social justice issues.
If I could add on to that as well, this summer we partnered with Berkeley Heights Unfiltered, which is like our parent organization, which is obviously townwide, whereas ours focuses on GL specifically. But they're all Governor Livingston graduates, and they have given us so much insight onto stuff they experienced at GL and what many people experience at GL in regards to the initiatives of our club. So that has been a really good indication of what we can strive to do better and what we can initiate within our club. So again, as Mackenzie said, we've never sent out a formal survey, but working with them has been really incredibly helpful.
I will say, Dr. Cristanino, we have been working on surveys more for right now for parents. I know I've received some information from Ms. Kopaz on staff, and we will eventually get to students. But we would want the middle school and high school students to have some input in what goes in the survey for students. But it's coming. It just, everything keeps getting sidetracked because of COVID. So, but we were hoping to send something out at least by the end of December.
Now, I know it's a big undertaking, and I really applaud you, especially to get our student leaders involved. So I kudos to all of those that are really stepping up to the plate.
I would like to ask, I give a lot of credit to what's going on at GL. Steve, have we made any headway at Columbia?
Absolutely, Ms. Kirsch. The Columbia has a parallel structure and organization. It's moving a little slower, just that we're dealing with a younger student body. So
Right.
they need a little more guidance, where at the high school, the students are more mature and ready to step up. But there's a lot of enthusiasm there. They're just, they need a little more time to get organized and directed, that's all. But
Okay.
there's, the team has met twice. That's Ms. Acosta and Mr. Mora are the administrators working with that. They've got their first action team in place, and they've got a couple of meetings going or building towards a year-end culminating activity. So they're working very closely with the high school at the administrative level. Hopefully, when we are past the current pandemic, we're looking to do some more things between the buildings too. So the answer is yes. It's a little slower by the nature of where they are.
Okay, thank you. That's great because that'll build the high school program. It'll carry it forward. Thanks.
Any other questions from the board for anybody on our diversity either committee or staff?
It's Mike real quick. No, I just want to say thank you, everybody. This was great information, and thank you to the students. And one thing, if I could add as a suggestion, especially thinking about how to bridge between the high school, and again, once we get past the COVID, is having some of the student leadership with the K through 5. So I think it'd be a great way to see how, as mentors and looking up and seeing, a future, what they can do, how they can be involved with everything. It may also help to bridge that connection versus nothing against the adults, but also seeing someone, in their peer in the school, a little bit older, talking about this might be something to think about.
Great, thanks to all. I think we're off to a great start with diversity across the district, in the different schools, with our partnership with the Diversity Council, with the Mayor's Council. So there's really a lot going on. And again, next Wednesday will be the listening session for the Diversity Council with the school district. So again, thank you.
I do have one more question specifically of the students, piggybacking off of what Jerry said regarding the survey. When you have these events, have you had, or is it your expectation that they draw a broad cross-section of students at the school?
So
I would imagine that's your goal. So my question is that happening, or do you anticipate that happening?
Well, specifically, since diversity committee is just starting, specifically in the case of UAC, we had just established ourselves in March, and that's right when we went into remote learning. So it was difficult to progress and have more events. But during the first 2 meetings that we had, we made sure to emphasize that although it is a club that celebrates Asian cultures, it's not exclusively for Asian students only. We welcome students from all backgrounds, not just for Asian students. And last month we had our first meeting of the year, and it was really fulfilling for me to see that there were students that were not just Asian, and they were all willing to take part. We had over 20 students log into the Zoom call for a meeting. So I think that's a good indication of how willing the GL community is to work towards this inclusiveness in our community. So when the diversity committee is able to finally have the first event, hopefully in person by when things settle, I do expect that a wide variety, a diverse group of kids will be able to join and take part.
That is very great to hear. Thank you.
Great. Again, thanks to everybody. Melissa, we'll go on to the next topic.
Absolutely. So we are now moving on to Ms. Kopaz and Mr. McKinney, and they're going to discuss curriculum and instruction in a pandemic.
Good evening, everyone. This has been a challenging time for all of us as we navigate the impact of the pandemic within the world of education. Tonight, we will provide an overview of how the Berkeley Heights schools are making use of data and formative assessments to identify student needs and adjust our instruction to meet those needs. I'm pleased to be presenting this information with Ms. Kopaz, the newly hired Director of Elementary Education and Intervention. We will bounce back and forth to provide some examples and snapshots of data points across grade levels. We will then demonstrate how we use these various data collection tools and analyze these data points to determine the best ways to differentiate and individualize instruction as we progress through the district curriculum. We are all acutely aware of the impact of this pandemic on all aspects of our community. As a school district, we were thrust into fully remote instruction last March. And from March to June, we worked together to make the best of this learning experience and support our students. And we cannot say it enough, our teachers went above and beyond to quickly adapt to this change and teach our students in a virtual environment. Throughout the spring and summer months, the district administrators collaborated on numerous scenarios and plans to enhance the learning environment while maintaining our flexibility so that we could adjust to the unpredictable and changing public health concerns. While much of the planning was consumed by logistics and schedules, we also built an aligned system that prioritized identifying and remediating educational gaps. This work was supported through the creation of formal structures that ensured that this work was a focal point for everyone in the district. It's important to note that this process is something that occurs every year in every classroom. Our teaching staff members work with our students to identify their current strengths and weaknesses and adjust their instruction to meet the needs where they are in their learning progression. This work is not new to our instructional staff. However, as the interruption in education extended beyond the traditional summer slide, it was imperative that we adjust some of our diagnostic tools and practices to collect additional data points. These data points are used to identify global trends as well as individual needs. Teachers are then able to use these findings and plan appropriately. Plans could include strategically grouping students based upon their needs, or could range from some one-on-one remediation all the way to the other end of the spectrum, where we provide extension and enrichment opportunities as appropriate. Ms. Kopaz will share some of the data points that we used to help this process. This listing is not exhaustive, but covers many of the most commonly referenced sources of data within our schools and our classrooms. Ms. Kopaz?
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. As Mr. McKinney stated, this is what we always do. It's how we get to know our students. Here is a list of some of our benchmarks and tools we use to pinpoint each student's area of strength and areas in need of growth. I'll briefly go through this list with you to talk to you about how we collect specific information in different areas. So for example, the first three are reading assessments, our Fountas and Pinnell in grades K through 5, Dibbles in grades K through 3, and then our predictive assessment for reading, and we give that assessment as needed. And the Dibbles and the PAR, the predictive assessment for reading, are also dyslexia screening tools. We have iReady for math. We also include district level benchmarks, real-time data gathered by teachers and district interventionists. That could be the formative assessments that take place day in and day out in the classroom and remote setting. We have historical data from prior years. That might be something, for example, such as our student learning assessment, our state assessment, which is called the NJSLA Student Learning Assessment. We have math space, we have rubrics, performance-based assessments, which might include something like an authentic writing task or a student's writing portfolio. Previous and current year teacher recommendations, and student parent interviews, feedback, and surveys. What we do is we take these tools. It really allows us to drill down to find specific standards that need targeting, and this data informs our instruction. We analyze the data, we hold data meetings to discuss each and every student at the elementary level, and we differentiate accordingly. The next slide, you'll see some general findings and what the data told us. As we perform these diagnostic assessments with our students this fall, the results were varied, which we expected. While some students needed significant supports and remediation, many remained on track and on grade level, and some students actually really thrived in this environment and enjoyed it. Overall, student attendance wasn't negatively impacted. During the pandemic, it was consistent or better than pre-COVID-19 attendance. And that really helped with the continuity of instruction. And instructing students in a virtual setting, the reality is it takes longer, and we know that. There are inherent issues with communication and checking for understanding. So for example, there may be technology issues, or it may take longer to get everyone to respond to questions. And we know that assessments take longer in this setting. So we really have to adjust our pacing in order to adjust to the extra time that it takes in a remote setting. Mr. McKinney?
We also noticed there's some additional challenges for students that we identified in the transitional years. For example, entering our school system, grade 2, grade 6, and grade 9. These students likely would have benefited from the traditional activities aimed at supporting moving into a new school setting. In these classrooms, more time was spent establishing a school community and developing the classroom routines during the month of September. Generally speaking, this idea of consistent classroom routines and effectively communicating expectations also leads to increased efficiency in hybrid learning environment. This was one of our biggest takeaways from the spring, and teachers implemented many of these lessons learned to start the school year. Finally, there were some identifiable patterns of students who struggled the most with these changes in the spring. And they fell into 3 categories. As you would expect, students who had issues with engagement or attendance prior to COVID continued to have some of those issues during this learning environment. And we used many of the resources and the partnership with parents and the home to try to address those issues. There were also issues with students who faced challenges with organizing and learning in this digital format. And we relied on building in some individual skill development and learning strategies to help all students in this digital environment. And finally, we are also finding a population of students who are struggling with the amount of screen time and just their stamina for learning without actually being in an in-person setting. So those are the kind of general categories that we found students who really had difficulties in this learning environment. And again, these are broad generalizations of what we found, but one of the most important takeaways is that not every student was impacted in the same way during this crisis. While we can probably all agree that nothing replaces face-to-face interaction that takes place during in-person instruction, we also must acknowledge that many of our students were able to maintain progress and even flourish in this environment. And we also learned that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution for all of our students who have fallen behind. These issues must be addressed through individualized and targeted measures that support their individual needs. The next few slides are snapshot examples of how we collect and analyze data to inform our instruction. Again, they're just examples. They're not the only ways we do it, but I felt that it would be helpful to give a little insight in this area.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. So on this slide, we have a snapshot of our benchmark reading assessment data. One data point we use is the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark reading assessment to determine independent and instructional reading levels of our students in the elementary schools. These benchmarks are used to measure student behaviors, such as how they're doing in fluency, comprehension, and accuracy. As we would have predicted, our students showed a slight decline overall in percentage of students who are reading at or above grade level, but I'm going to dig a little deeper in a few minutes to show exactly what that means. And using this information, reading groups are formed and teachers are able to provide targeted supports to facilitate growth for all students and remediate any identified deficiencies. So in the lower grades, if you look at the chart now, in the lower grades, you'll notice that the percentages are lower, and this is perfectly normal. It's because children are learning to read in kindergarten and first grade, and it's completely developmental. Students are learning to read at very different rates. So you can see the numbers are in the 50s and 60s, which again is something we would expect. Once students are readers, you could see they jump up to the 70 percentiles to show that they are reading at or above grade level. And they need to read and practice on a consistent basis. As Mr. McKinney mentioned, he used that term earlier in the presentation. He called it the summer slide. It's because children generally do not read as much over the summer, so they lose skills. And so when we look at fall data, we are seeing a reflection of some of that summer slide. And in this fall, in September, we even saw a bit of a spring/summer slide. So with that said, you can see some percentages changing, and they're not drastic of how many students are reading at or above grade level. However, what I'd like you to really look at are the same cohort of students. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. If a student was in kindergarten in the fall of 2019, in the fall of 2020, they're in first grade. So I'd really like you to look at it on an angle where you go from 54% to 65%. That means those students actually grew 11%. Continued on that same thinking, first grade in fall in 2019, now they're second graders in 2020, they went from 58% to 73% reading at or above grade level. That's an increase of 15%. Again, if you follow that same logic, we only had slight decreases with same cohorts of students. From second grade to third grade, they went down 4%. From third grade to fourth grade, they went down 3%. And from fourth grade to fifth grade, they went down 2%. You can't really see that on the slide. I'm sorry about that. But those bottom numbers are 75%, 75%, and then 0% change. So what that's really telling us is that other than a handful of students maybe regressing a bit, we really didn't have major concerns with how students were progressing as far as reading was concerned. And the other thing that this shows us is it's a way we determine the level of need of supports that a student would need, whether they need strategic support or intensive supports, and then we would provide that or those services.
As we move to the middle school, one of the tools that we utilize in grades 5 through 12 is MathSpace. This is an adaptive technology platform that is tied directly to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Each year, teachers use this tool to identify content or concepts that students need to review before beginning their new coursework so that they have a strong foundational understanding of the work they will need to complete during the school year. The math results for the CMS students demonstrate that they were able to successfully finish last year's math course. That is good news, of course, but the purpose of sharing the snapshot is really to explain how we identify students who do need additional supports this year so that they can be as successful as possible in their new math course and set themselves up for success in higher level math courses awaiting them at the high school level. These slides are really not for the purpose of showing student growth or achievement, but rather how we use these tools to identify students and then get those students the help that they need so that we are successful with all of our students. We took a similar approach at the high school level. The snapshot we selected to share is the AP testing that took place in May of 2020. Although this shares data from a smaller segment of the high school population, it is an important data point as it provides instructional feedback using a standardized assessment that can be compared locally and nationally. Despite the pandemic, our students were able to take and pass their AP exams at an extremely high level. In fact, the number of students participating in the AP program continues to grow despite a small gradual decline in the high school enrollment. There were some subject areas that were outliers as compared to the scores from previous years, but this data allows us to examine our instructional practices and share our findings among staff members to inform and improve our instruction.
On this slide, we want to talk about ways we're addressing student needs and accelerating student learning. We have received guidance from the Department of Education, and they've given us steps for accelerating student learning, and it actually makes us feel very confident since these are existing structures that we already have in place. So for example, if you look on the left side of the slide, those steps include prioritizing the most critical prerequisite skills and knowledge for each subject area and grade level. We've already done that work in department meetings and grade level meetings. Diagnose students' unfinished learning and prerequisite content knowledge and prerequisite skills. Again, we've already done that work through data meetings and benchmarking. Adapt your scope and sequence and pacing guidance. We've already done that work. Train your teachers and leaders to diagnose students' unfinished learning and provide acceleration support. That is ongoing. We continue to do that throughout the year. And monitor your students' progress on grade appropriate assignments and adjust accordingly. Again, we have benchmarks scheduled throughout the year, and we also use formative and summative assessments to continue to determine evidence of student growth and understanding. And again, as I mentioned, these are existing structures that we already have in place and work that we've already accomplished. Mr. McKinney?
So as we organized our approach to making sure that we address student needs and we accelerate student learning, we really broke it into the three big categories that you see on the slide. First, by adjusting and modifying our curriculum with an emphasis on building strong foundational skills that will support future growth and achievement. And this is most easily observable in an adjustment to scope and sequence from prior years. We have also spent a majority of our time planning for differentiating and individualizing our supports to meet the varied needs of our learners. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. This includes working to maximize our staffing resources and our interventionists to utilize their areas of expertise to help as many students as possible. And then finally, we continue to adjust and monitor our classroom instruction with an eye on maintaining high levels of student engagement and attendance in our programs. This is best accomplished through collaboration among teachers, students, and their families.
And on this last slide, there's a visual to show you how we support our students. We use what's called a multi-tiered system of supports that has 3 tiers. If you look at the base or the widest part of the triangle, that's tier 1, which is called universal supports. That's all teachers providing supports for all students. We differentiate through process, product, content, and assessment. And we're meeting the needs of all our students. We then have what's called tier 2, which is our targeted small group interventions. And that's really our strategic grouping. And then we have the top of the pyramid, which is our tier 3 interventions. And that's where the interventions have greater intensity and duration, and we use significant staff and resources to provide students with what they need. And going around the triangle are all the vital pieces to the puzzle in helping students to grow and succeed, including leadership, family and community engagement, and positive school culture and climate.
So as we open the presentation to questions from the Board of Education members, I'd like to remind everyone that our work is far from over. Obviously, we are still adjusting our schedules and instructional models to account for changing public health data. We need to continue this cycle of data collection and planning to meet the needs of our students. This will require patience and flexibility by all involved. It will take longer than any of us would like, but we will continue to do the work necessary to meet the needs of all of our students.
Mary Beth, Scott, thanks. Questions from the board?
Okay, I'll go. Couple of questions. My first question is on a global basis, not on an individual child basis. It doesn't look like these gaps are huge based on what I just saw you present. So that's good. But my question is, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, the longer we stay remote, do these gaps grow or not? And then my second question is, have we considered, in terms specifically with regards to tier 3 and maybe even tier 2, our teachers have a lot on their plate with remote and hybrid. Have we thought about the effectiveness, never mind the financial efficiency, but the effectiveness of potentially making temporary investments in teacher support to perhaps accelerate remediation of some of these gaps, particularly at the tier 3 and maybe even tier 2 level? So I know that's a lot, but.
Sure. First, I think there is some good news in the data that it is the results are mixed. Now, I would say that our findings have showed us that students have different gaps in different areas. Some students are struggling in some subject areas and doing fine in others. There are other students who are, and I mentioned kind of the students who are struggling with the engagement piece in the hybrid or the remote learning environment. They're struggling across the board, and that's a different challenge that has to be addressed in a different way. So the gaps are there. The real big takeaway for us when, and we didn't know what we were going to find. This is our first time dealing with a stretch like this, but it really, just like there is not a one size fits all for the best model of doing this, there's also not a one size fits all plan that addresses all student needs. We really, really have to become good at individualizing and differentiating what we do. And so that's a big component.
And Scott, that's kind of why I'm thinking that, an individual, a teacher, needs to give that individualized focus and needs to keep moving the ball forward, but also has to play catch up with some of these individual, students. And that's why I asked the question about whether or not temporary investments in teacher support, might help us accelerate that. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, and that's something that I'm not sure that we know quite yet. So your second question was kind of, are the gaps still growing? And we're not in full recovery mode. If we were back in school and everything was as it traditionally was, we would be making greater gains. I will tell you that we've improved how we're doing things, so that even if there are gaps that are still occurring, we're doing a better job of not allowing them to grow as quickly. And I think it is something we're going to have to consider. We do have a number of district interventionists who work, especially when we get to that tier 3 level. And we are trying to maximize their time with students and be creative with scheduling, but it is something we may have to consider. I think it's a fair point and a good question. Do we need to make that investment? The challenge there will be what's out there to support that. But it is something, we've begun to discuss, but I don't know that we're quite sure where we need to go yet.
Which is a question, if you don't mind. Have you looked at similar regression or how our students with disabilities have been doing? Have they fared likewise, or we're seeing more of a concern with the students that we doing for those students?
It really, I think I may have anticipated that the grouping might have been had greater gaps, but it really fell in line with those main categories as far as students who struggled with organization had a new organizational structure that they had to learn. And, in a digital environment, that's a different challenge. So, we had to adjust as educators so that we provided those frameworks and tools so that they could be successful. So it really, it didn't blanket the special ed population in general. But in those areas that we did identify, if students struggled within those categories, they struggled as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from board members?
Yes, Scott, I have an observation. When you look at the CMS math space diagnostics, at least at the beginning of the year, it looks like both within the subject matter and in the cohort, there's improvement. So is that something that we believe is actually happening, or is there maybe the capability for children to use other things at home out of the teacher's view that may be helping them improve on those assessments?
I think that stuck out, those numbers stuck out to us as well. And we, I don't know that we're able to give a fully causal reason for that, but we did take a look at the number of students who participated in math space assignments over the summer. And we had an increase in the number of students who made use of the tool over the summer, during the summer assignments, as well as an increase in the average number of problems that they accomplished over that summer. So, just sticking to the math space environment, I don't know if people felt that a greater need to, keep up and do some math in the summer, but we definitely had an increase there. And again, we're not able to say that that's the reason for that, success in that area, but it is something that we are a little bit pleased about, because I think it is bearing some of the fruit that Mr. Ziobro and his staff have been working on pretty hard for a number of years, and maybe put us in a better spot than other districts, even when it comes to moving to the hybrid learning environment.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Scott. Other questions?
Go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. McKinney, the increase in the number of students taking the AP test, do you think that attributes to the fact that it's a modified version? And secondly, the passing rate of 3 and better, is that normal for the students at GL? Is that standard?
Yes, that comparison is standard, and we did take a look. Well, we don't have all of the numbers, the district breakdowns. We do have the state and national numbers, and they were consistent from prior years. So our performance, relative to the state, passing rates and the national passing rates remained very, very good. It was a modified exam, different format. The students actually took it online, a much shorter exam at home, nationwide, not just the Governor Livingston students. But the fact that they still felt comfortable taking the test was a credit to our teachers, and that they were still able to pass at such a high rate was, something that, gave us, made us feel pretty good about what our teachers were accomplishing, even in a challenging environment. And that our students felt, confident enough to take a difficult exam and still be successful. And hopefully that'll bear fruit for them as they move on to college.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Looking at the, on slide 6, thank you for the diagonal reference on that. It was interesting to see, like you indicated, Mary Beth, that the numbers did go up, which I was, again, pleasantly surprised. But how did that compare, or did we do any comparison to other districts to see, did they see similar numbers where they did see increases versus what I would have assumed and thought would have been probably status quo or slightly a slight regression because of, again, the online learning?
Thank you for the question. I actually haven't analyzed other districts, but I can say that going in, I think all of us anticipated that the numbers would go down if you followed the same cohort. So we were pleasantly surprised. And I really do think it speaks to, and I have to give a shout out to the families, because clearly the families were doing a tremendous amount of supporting their children in the spring and throughout the summer, because it was such a difficult time for everyone, and nothing, a time that no one could anticipate or expect. But the fact that everybody was at home and parents were trying to work remotely from home, yet they were still somehow supporting their children and teaching them in addition to the work that our teachers were doing. And it really just goes to show you that the partnership between the family and the school, the home and school, really, I think, made a difference, and the data shows it. So you really have to give a shout out not only to the teachers and the work they did, but also the families.
No, and I agree. And one thing I may ask is, as you're looking at the potential we're going to do for remediation, also looking at is how we can help the parents also help out, so as you're saying. So yes, we are looking at putting all these programs in place, helping out the students, helping out the teachers, but also keep in mind too that, what else can we do for the parents to really help them out to ensure that we are providing the best environment, any of the tools, the tricks, etc., of doing that as we're thinking of these programs.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Everybody good? Okay, Mary Beth, Scott, thank you. I suspect we'll hear from you later on in the year. I know this is not a one and done type of thing. I know you, your staff, the administrators, the teachers are doing this every day. And I suspect in some time, maybe in the spring, we'll hear back from you and just get an update as to how we're doing in this area. Dr. Varley, I would assume that concludes your superintendent's report.
That is the end of my superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. Moving forward, are there any liaison reports from board members this evening?
Yes.
Angela?
So I joined the Berkeley Heights Education Foundation meeting on October 20th, and I'm just going to give you a quick update. They're continuing to work on their pandemic-related grant items for all of the schools. They're also at the moment brainstorming on their literary lunch program. This program is usually held indoors at Columbia Middle School for 6th through 8th grades. And obviously due to the pandemic, they can't do that this year. So they are looking to work with the Berkeley Heights Public School Diversity Committee. And I reached out to Mr. Hopkins during the diversity meeting and asked him if he could reach out to the appropriate people and see how we can make this happen. And he said he definitely will. He thought that was a great idea. They've also launched a new updated website, bhedfoundation.org. So when you get an opportunity, have a look at it. It looks really great. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Other board members, Helen?
Yes. Ed Services is continuing with their hybrid model for the handicap classes, and the alternative high school for Elizabeth is continued remote. They were contacted by the state police, who are coordinating a distribution of PPE equipment for local districts. So they will be warehousing the equipment for the individual districts to pick up the equipment at their Westfield site. School boards had their workshop, and the individual workshops are available to register for several more months. And the Environmental Commission through their coordination with many businesses in town with collecting the clear plastics, obtained 17 Trek benches. They are reestablishing collection at Taylor Rental and one other site to try to get more benches. Several have been placed in Columbia Park, plus other areas within the town. That concludes my report.
Great, Helen, thanks very much. Any other board members with liaison reports? Great, moving on. Donna, facilities report.
Okay. Over the past week, the large rooftop exhaust fans were installed at the middle school multipurpose room, at the Hughes multipurpose room, and at both gyms at GL. This will greatly improve the air circulation in these spaces and in the adjoining hallways and classrooms. The repair of the window springs is continuing and ongoing. And our maintenance staff is installing LED lighting in the Columbia multipurpose room and the hallways at Columbia. Additionally, they have replaced the lighting at the exterior of all schools. This project is an upgrade to the current lighting. It reduces the energy costs, and the cost of the supplies are reimbursed by the New Jersey Smart Start program. So overall, it's a win-win. We get better lighting and we're saving money, and the cost of the supplies is reimbursed. So we're happy to continue with that program. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Donna. Any questions for Donna on facilities? Okay, moving on. We'll now begin the citizens hearing. As I've said at past meetings previously, if you can hopefully direct your questions that are board level questions to the either the board members or the superintendent. It can be either on a subject we talked about in the presentations this evening or any other matter that you want comes before the board. If you have a question that's more directed for an individual student as it relates to scheduling or something else for your student, it's probably the school principal is probably the best place to do that. With that, the first person I see is Ruth Brogdon. Ruth, good evening. How are you this evening?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Good evening. How are you tonight?
Good. Very good. Thank you, Doug. Good evening, everyone. My statement is, it's more of a statement and an acknowledgement rather than a question. I just wanted to take the opportunity in light of the incident that happened with the GL hateful Instagram post. I wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to Dr. Varley in particular and Mr. Nixon. Right after the post was posted, Dr. Varley did respond in a very timely manner with an email to the district, which denounced this post, outlined steps to investigate this post, discussed their collaboration and partnership with the Berkeley Heights Police Department. And I very much appreciate that timely email that was sent out. Very shortly after that, I understand Mr. Nixon during the long teachers convention took time out of his time off to meet with students, to hear what students knew and how they felt about it. And I do appreciate that time that he took. And then following the weekend, just this past Tuesday, I understood that he sent an email out to all of the students, again, impressing upon, that this is not tolerated in our community and that this investigation is ongoing. So I feel like that I'm very thankful for the steps that the administration and the faculty took in a very timely and strong manner in denouncing this. I also want to thank our fellow community members because I know, as Dr. Varley mentioned, there were a lot of parents and students that spoke up, but from someone from the community, I also heard the same thing, and I'm glad that we stood together as a community to stand against this. And last but not least, I just want to say I do not take it lightly that you took a lot of time and resources to do this. in light of the COVID surge that's going on in GL. So again, thank you, and I appreciate your efforts.
Ruth, thank you very much for your comments. Lee Timmerman, you are next. Lee, you can unmute.
There we go. I wanted to take a longer view and talk to the board. This is a recommendation to the board. I've been told that our school system does not have HEPA filters in the classrooms or in the buildings. And I would like to see the board put on their agenda for next year's budget. And I know that's a long way off, and I'll try to remember to do it again in spring, to either create a study to see how much it would cost to upgrade the ventilation systems, or to move forward with the upgrading the ventilation system for our students. So this is simply a request to the board to put that on their agenda for future. I appreciate everything that's being done. I know it's the most we could do right now. Maybe we could do the study this year, but we're using all our money, I'm sure, for PPE. So I understand the constraints of it. So I just want to put that out there so we take a longer view. COVID-19 might be gone. Hopefully it will be gone by spring. We'll get vaccinated, but we'll have another one in a year or 2 or 3 years or 4 years, as far as I'm concerned. That's my comment.
Lee, thank you very much. I'll make sure that the facilities committee, along with the business administrator, put that on the docket for discussion. So I appreciate your comments this evening. Thank you. Good evening, Stacy Toporak. How are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I am outstanding.
I just wanted to address the board and Dr. Varley. This is regarding the COVID outbreak. I wasn't prepared that I was going to be this soon, but I just want to say, so in August, before we returned to school, I was pretty concerned for my own health, as well as the health of my coworkers and the students I would be teaching. And I know a lot of people were concerned about all of that. Like, we weren't sure what COVID restrictions were going to be in place, and how those COVID restrictions would safeguard us. I suffer from asthma. Every spring and fall, I battle chronic bronchitis, which ironically, this past spring, I was not in the building. I was not around sick students. I did not get bronchitis. We returned to school here in the fall, and typically at this exact time, when we're seeing this surge in the COVID cases, this is usually when I get that. And even like sometimes that's why my voice is hoarse. I mean, yeah. So we are, I have a compromised respiratory system. I know that students and coworkers do, as they also have other compromising situations with their health. So with that in mind, although our buildings are equipped with hand sanitizing stations, plexiglass for teachers' desks, some, I know at the elementary schools, they have plexiglass at students' desks. We do not have plexiglass on students' desks in the high school. There are one-way hallway signs. Students and staff were required to wear masks. Unfortunately, although we can control all of this inside our buildings, we can't control what happens outside our buildings that affect our daily operation. I know you all know that. The data, yes, states that schools are not super spreaders, but when people are reckless outside of school, jeopardizing the health of students and teachers, the virus now enters our buildings, threatening what was deemed a safe environment, and something more than a 2-week shutdown has to be instituted. Being one of those staff members who got a call saying I had to quarantine had me concerned for my health and angry that I, my fellow educators and students, some of who have compromised immune systems, others who care for elderly family members or live with those who would be impacted if they became ill. I have students who live with their grandparents, and we know the older population are also impacted. We were put into this situation. We walked back into the building in September. We put our faith in the Board of Ed and Dr. Varley that we would have transparency about protocols and the necessary safeguards. Unfortunately, the district trusted the families and students to be responsible enough to realize their actions outside of school have far and wide consequences inside school. If we can't trust every member of our community and our schools to take the right precautions or maintain the social distancing guidelines and restrictions to stop the spread or even flatten the curve, we have to do it for them. People often consider schools to be the extension of the family. If someone in your family can't make the right decisions, you have to make those decisions for them. If this is just the beginning of the second wave, I and other fellow faculty members, and I can't speak for the community, but maybe them too, don't think it's wise for us to return to hybrid after the end of the 14 days. And I know we're moving forward with the elementary schools to go back with larger capacity, but a lot of other districts in our area have made choices to stay virtual until after Thanksgiving or even after Christmas. I know that even larger school districts with less cases have also opted for this. I hope you, Dr. Varley, and the Board of Ed take this into consideration when moving ahead with your reopening plan for Berkeley Heights. Being back in the classroom and seeing students face to face is incredible. There's an energy that's very different. But with us half home and half in school, it's great being one place together. And although that's an incredible experience for learning and engaging, if it comes at the expense of the health of the students and teachers of Berkeley Heights, and then they bring it home to their families, is it worth it?
Great. Stacey, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts tonight. Lindsay Marabella, you're up next. Good evening, Lindsay.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. How are you tonight?
Well, thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the board and the community. As you said, my name is Lindsay Marabella. I've been an English teacher at Governor Livingston for the past 10 years. And I want to speak today about the need for Berkeley Heights community and school district to reconsider the approach we are taking to schooling during this pandemic. Until recently, I have always felt a very strong sense of community here. I felt included and cared for. However, with the district's incessant push towards in-person education during a pandemic, many of my colleagues and I no longer feel cared about. And to be perfectly frank, the perception by many teachers is that the district is so single-minded in its goal to bring all kids back into the building that they are willing to place the health and safety of staff and students as a lesser priority. The current outbreak that this town is experiencing demonstrates that while the ultimate goal of getting everyone back in the classroom is an important one, we are not ready. As evidenced by our current situation, not everyone is doing the right thing. Over 40 Berkeley Heights students have tested positive. Over 60 staff members and even more students have had to quarantine as a result of exposure, and some weren't even notified until a week after that exposure occurred. A full week of unknowingly exposing their own families and others to the virus. This was not because of a shortcoming with administration or their contact tracing. It was because people behaved irresponsibly and then were not forthcoming. Can we trust that people are not going to travel or see family or friends over Thanksgiving or winter break? And if they do, can we trust that they will be honest about it? It is shocking to me, given the current numbers in both the state and in Berkeley Heights, that we have not closed all district schools. And it is shocking to me that the district will not consider all virtual instruction surrounding the holidays in an effort to protect staff and students. The standard response of the virus does not spread in school is not acceptable. There is no database we can reliably look to that tells us exactly how and when people have become infected, particularly when we have widespread lack of cooperation with contact tracers. It is irresponsible of us to assume that educating students in person will not lead to additional transmission of the virus. I want to be very clear that what I'm saying has nothing to do with me not wanting to do my job. I would love nothing more than to have all my students back in class, teaching them as normal, because teaching remotely is much more difficult than teaching normally. And in no way does my advocacy for remote teaching stem from a desire to take the easy way out. It stems from the care for my colleagues, for my own family, for my students and their families. Students do not learn well when they are afraid. Teachers do not perform well when they are afraid or when they do not feel valued. And if the board wants to truly say that it values its staff and students, this relentless push to get kids in the building has to stop. We need to take an approach that is deliberate and safe, and we can get there eventually, but it should not be at the expense of anyone's health. Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts tonight. Next up, Dan McGovern. Dan, good evening.
Good evening, Doug. Thank you. As Doug said, I'm Dan McGovern. I'm teacher of physics at Governor Livingston High School. I'm also the BHEA president. The BHEA members have worked tirelessly throughout this pandemic to deliver the highest quality education possible, given the myriad of challenges this pandemic throws at us, while also implementing necessary safety protocols to keep everyone as safe as possible in our school buildings. Unfortunately, the outbreak at GL has shown that without support outside of school, our efforts to keep each other safe will not work. I'm urging this board to put the health and safety of students and staff first and immediately move to all virtual instruction, as Berkeley Heights is in the midst of an outbreak and all data indicates this is only going to get worse before it gets better. There are reports that at least one quarantined staff member from GL is exhibiting symptoms of COVID. The theory that schools are immune from the spread are false, and we need to take action to prevent further illness or worse within our school community. Students should not have to risk their lives to receive an education, and staff should not have to risk their lives to deliver an education in this country. While all virtual instruction is not perfect, it mitigates the real and observed risk of in-person instruction at this time. Let's take the risk out of the equation right now, stop the discussion about moving pre-K to 5 to Plan A, and move the entire district to all virtual instruction immediately. With the approach of the holiday season, it would be naive of us to think that no social gatherings will occur. We're going to be in the same boat we're now days after Thanksgiving. So why don't we be proactive instead of reactive? Follow the prudent example of other districts in the state and make the announcement now of moving to all virtual instruction until at least 2 weeks after New Year's Day, so that families and staff can prepare appropriately as opposed to having to react at a moment's notice. Let's spend the interim time strengthening our in-person plan together so that when the time and weather are right, we can safely welcome back our students to the classroom. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your thoughts tonight. Nicole Manganelli. Nicole, good evening. How are you tonight?
Sorry. Hi, how are you? Sorry. I think I'm echoing. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Nicole Manganelli, and I teach at Governor Livingston, and I'm also a longtime resident of Berkeley Heights. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I work incredibly hard to make virtual learning the best that it can be. And I want just as much as everybody else to go back to the classroom. This is the hardest I've worked. This is my 24th year in education. However, I definitely do not feel comfortable going back to the school next week. And I just want to share a couple of personal things because this is personal. And I think that you guys sometimes need to hear some of the backstories. While the parents have the option to keep their children home, the teachers don't have that option. It's been stated a number of times that the virus is not spread in the classroom. However, because I was in a classroom, me and almost 70 other teachers are in quarantine right now. Being in quarantine has been very inconvenient for me, and I'm very angry about it. And it has nothing to do with what I have done. I have been incredibly careful since March. People think that I'm a little bit over the top, but the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want to regret anything that I do or don't do and bring this virus to my family. In the summer, my oncologist told me that she did not want me returning to school in person. However, since I was told that I could not teach from home and did not want to use up all of my sick days in case I do get this virus and need to teach from need to take my sick days, I chose to put myself at risk every day. The virus has personally affected my family as my sister has been suffering from the after effects of this virus for over 7 months. She has completely lost her life and she is not alone in her struggle. And if you have not heard about long haulers, you probably should do some research about it. No one knows how to help them because this is all too new. And yes, most students will get mildly sick and then they'll move on. However, adults that come in contact with them may not be so lucky. In addition, there have been reports of children with mild cases who later on begin to have strange ailments. Since March, we have not been together with my immediate family at all. A couple of times we've seen each other out in the backyard, very distant. We decided to order a nice big heater so that for Thanksgiving, my mom doesn't have to be alone for another holiday since she was alone. She's been alone this whole time. If we have to go back to school for those 5 days, just for the sake of going back to school, and all of a sudden we find out we have to quarantine again, she's going to spend the holidays alone, and so am I. So lastly, I would like to mention that my fellow teachers in the elementary schools and the middle schools, for the same reason that GL should not be going back, I do not believe that they should have in-person classes at this time. And I definitely do not believe that the elementary schools should be going back to Plan A anytime soon. Thank you for your time.
Good call. Thanks very much for your thoughts this evening.
Thank you.
Todd Decker up next. Todd, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been fortunate enough to be a social studies teacher at GL since 2001. Just the standard that New Jersey uses to determine if out-of-state visitors and returning residents should self-quarantine is if the state they're returning from has a daily 7-day average of new cases greater than 10 per 100,000 persons. Simply put, an average of 1 new case per 1,000 residents per day. There's been over 40 new COVID cases among GL students in just the last week. That's an average of 5.5 new cases per day. With an enrollment of around 1,000 students, GL currently exceeds the travel advisory threshold by more than a factor of 5. This is far greater than the infection rate of any of the 45 US states on New Jersey's own quarantine list. As a teacher, I know the value of in-person instruction, and I really long for its return as soon as possible. And I'm thankful for the board and the administration's really Herculean efforts to begin this year on a hybrid model. However, now a typical class at GL in person has just a small fraction of the students it would normally have in any given cohort. 2 of my cohort groups, I have 2 students. Okay. Yes, I have days where I have 2 students sitting in the classroom and 17 or more students at home on Zoom. And I have to wonder, what extra value is hybrid instruction offering these 2 kids when the vast majority of their peers are watching this on their computer at home? If hybrid instruction was giving kids a semblance of an ordinary school day, it would be worth the risk. But as it stands, the distancing, A and B cohorts, and a growing fully remote population, they're nowhere close to a normal high school experience for the dwindling numbers of in-person students. On the first day of school, New Jersey's 7-day moving average of new COVID cases was 338. Yesterday, it was 2,605. With upcoming vacations and holiday gatherings, it's completely unrealistic to believe cases will be trending lower anytime soon. And the quarantining of students returning from out-of-state holiday travel will only increase the number of fully remote pupils. Returning to hybrid instruction prior to infections trending significantly downward really poses unacceptable risks to both staff and students and has very little potential upside. I encourage the board and administration to keep GL all virtual, at least until late January, and only resume hybrid instruction if local case numbers return to levels close to when school started. Thank you for your time.
Great, Todd. Thank you very much this evening. Marcy Helmstetter, you're up next.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the Board of Education for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Marcy Homstetter, and I've been a teacher at Governor Livingston for over 17 years. I was exposed to COVID-19 in my classroom and was informed only 3 days ago of that direct exposure due to positive cases among students being still reported daily. I'm now quarantining in my house while also trying to teach remotely, and I may have unknowingly exposed others before I was notified of my own exposure. That fear and uncertainty are nearly paralyzing. The Board of Education has made it clear many times that its sole priority is to get students to attend school in person and to move to Plan A as quickly as possible. But as teachers, we have many priorities: providing a high educational experience in a multitude of modalities, seamlessly switching teaching modalities at a moment's notice, meeting our students' educational and emotional needs during uncertain and often scary times. And in these unprecedented times, which should be considered the most important priority of all, ensuring the safety of our students, families, and ourselves. The unwillingness of the Board of Education to change course when an obvious public health emergency has emerged in Berkeley Heights makes it impossible for us to maintain these priorities. We cannot provide a high quality education with the current level of uncertainty as to how that instruction will take place or change at a moment's notice. We can't meet the emotional needs of our students when we ourselves are scared. And we can't protect our students, families, and selves when we're so uncertain about our own exposure. While I too wish that we could welcome students back to the building with open arms, it's clear that it's not safe to do so at this time. The virus is spreading rapidly and uncontrollably in Berkeley Heights and Mountainside communities and will continue to do so with the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. Instead of prioritizing in-person classes, I urge you to focus on helping us maintain our priorities, educating our students, supporting their success, and protecting all of our health. It's impossible to bring students back safely at this time, but it is possible to support teachers in their educational and health-related efforts by switching to remote classes until this current spread has been brought under control. Thank you.
Marcy, thank you very much for your thoughts tonight. Jared, good evening. Jared Prupus, good evening. Jared, you're on mute, Jared.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Prupus, and I teach 4th grade at Mountain Park Elementary School. I am currently on a medical leave of absence. Good evening, Dr. Varley, Mr. McKinney, Mr. Einstein, and other Board of Education members. I request the board immediately move all schools in the district to complete remote instruction until the holidays are concluded. Even though I am not presently in the school, I am deeply concerned for the health and safety of all students and staff in our district. As you are aware, positive COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are significantly increasing in New Jersey. In Berkeley Heights, as you know, there is currently a large outbreak of COVID-19. Recently, Governor Murphy stated the second wave of coronavirus is no longer something off in the future. It is coming, and it is coming now. The risks to all students and staff have multiplied tremendously in the last few weeks due to pandemic fatigue, large social gatherings, and large social gatherings, and the potential of families traveling for the holidays. I strongly agree with the decision to stop in-person instruction at Governor Livingston High School. However, our community does not exist in isolation. Families have multiple siblings at different schools and travel to different buildings. In order to keep everyone safe and curb the spread of the virus, I urge the board to have all BHPS schools move to complete remote instruction and halt plans to welcome back more students physically to the school buildings until this latest wave of COVID-19 has subsided. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you very much for your thoughts this evening. I do not see anybody else wanting to address the board. I'll pause for a couple more seconds just to make sure that's the case. And as I said that, I stand corrected. Nick O'Sullivan, good evening, Nick. How are you this evening?
Hello, you were not incorrect. I just was late.
No worries.
Am I looking clear to you right now, or?
You're looking vertical to me right now, so.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Now you look horizontal, the way I would expect you to look.
Thanks for your help.
Okay.
I just wanted to first off thank the entire Board of Education and the administration for the safety efforts done so far. Internally, it's gone really well. The challenge right now is external and it's real. And I want to support my colleagues and K-12 and say that the real threat is here, and remind the board that it's here now. And unfortunately, we can't go outside as much. My class, I'm lucky I can bring outside a lot. So as we approach the spring, I'd like to see more efforts looked into. I know there's a lot of legal things, but about external instruction. And in the meantime, I want to encourage the board to push for instruction virtually because it is safer. And I want to just remind everyone that we all are people too. And I get it. My son is looking forward to going to school. He's 3. And we're hoping that his school will be open by then. Bridgewater Raritan's been closed an awful lot. And we want to get him to school. But at the same time, my other son is 6 months old and he hasn't gotten a virus yet. And we don't want to get his first virus to be, baby's first virus to be COVID. And that's it. Thank you for your efforts so far. And have a great night.
Nick, thanks for your comments this evening. Next up is Joe Maselli. Joe, good evening.
Hi, Mr. Runstein.
Good evening, Joe. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you to the board and Dr. Varley for hearing us tonight. My name is Joseph Maselli. I am a teacher at Governor Livingston High School in the math department. Many of my thoughts have already been stated by my colleagues, so I won't go into them again, but I do agree with everything said so far. What I'd like to note is that as horrible as this outbreak was this past week, we lucked out in the fact that we had 2 days of in-person schooling, both of which were the same cohort and only for the morning sessions. So our students only saw half their teachers. Had we had election day in the building or the Thursday, Friday of convention, the numbers that we're seeing could have been like astronomical compared to what we have now. And I just think that seeing the numbers so high with those 2 4-hour days, I think we need to be very cautious going back, even on the 19th, when these students will start seeing all their teachers. I can't even imagine a plan A for these younger students going all day with all the kids in. But just at the high school I'm speaking about, it just seems not worth the risk. Also, as other teachers have said, I'm currently quarantined. I was not contacted. I reached out because I was in a classroom working where a student tested positive, but administration didn't know to contact me because the contact tracing doesn't work like that. So there's so many moving pieces in this that we need to be aware of. We don't know where every teacher is at every time, where every student is at every time to properly contact trace this. And it's just very scary. I dreaded all summer coming back. And then we all knew this would happen as soon as they were outside parties, as holidays approached, and it did happen. So I don't know why, if we know this is going to happen again as Thanksgiving comes around, when people will be with family, specifically indoors, specifically without masks because they're eating and drinking, that this would not happen again, and possibly worse. With students traveling over these holidays, I just think it's irresponsible for us to go back and put us all in danger. Thank you.
Joe, thanks very much for your thoughts this evening as well. Not seeing any other people want to speak, I'm going to close the citizens hearing part of this. I will make one overall comment. As I counted, I believe there were 9 or so teachers mostly from Governor Livingston, but others spoke, as well as to comment on the large number of emails that we got from the teachers that we talked about in correspondence. And although none of the board members commented on that tonight, I want to let you know that we hear you loud and clear. We understand the challenges and the balance that we face in terms of safety, in terms of education. We've talked about that back from the summer when we started our July meeting, when we came up with the hybrid model and made some changes to how we started school, to some changes that we've made since school has started, and to how we will continue to look at the data, work with our health officers, and continue to make changes if we need to going forward. So please don't take the lack of response by any one of the board members or the administration as a sign that we don't hear you. Some of you talked very personally about how it's affected you and your families and your loved ones, not just the education that you serve. Many of you have been long-standing teachers in our community for many, many years, which we value. So again, there's always a risk that someone could say, wow, no board members even commented or said anything about that. So I will speak for everybody to say that we hear you loud and clear. We do look at the data. We do work with our health officers on a regular basis. And now it's daily. We do have people looking at this and are doing what we can to ensure the safety and security of all of our students and staff, as well as maintain the best educational outcomes for the entire community. With that, we'll move on to administration. We'll need all of the board members to unmute your microphones. If I could have a recommendation for the administration items.
Yes, I move administrative items A through F.
Second.
Motion a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mr. Joya,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Casano,
Yes.
Dr. Christenino,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes.
I move education items A and B.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mr. Joya,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Casano,
Yes.
Dr. Christenino,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes on B, abstain on A. I am president of their board of directors.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Personnel, item 16.
Move personnel items A through I.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mr. Joya,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Casano,
Yes.
Dr. Christenino,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Item 17, business.
I'll move business A through I.
I second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Item B for the cloud-based web filtering. Could somebody just explain a little bit more about that?
We moved to cloud, once we started going to cloud-based computing, and we've done, this is probably the second or third year that we've done this. This provides protection against, it's a security measure for hacking and keeps our web-based system secure.
Okay.
Again, I think this is the second year that we have this contract.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mr. Joya,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Casano,
Yes.
Dr. Christenino,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. 18, finance.
Yes, I reviewed the bills, as this will be the last time that I have done this. I think Donna and her staff loaded me down. But as usual, everything's in order. I do want to thank them for all the wonderful work that they've done and for our relationship all these years. I think we have a wonderful business administrator and certainly a wonderful business office, and I appreciate working with them. So thank you. Although I didn't appreciate all the bills. Anyway, I will move A through D.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mr. Joya,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Casano,
Yes.
Dr. Christenino,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Is there any other business to come before the board? Dr. Varley, did you want to?
Snow days. We, sorry, I got lost with everything else we've talked about tonight. So we do have 3 days built into our calendar for snow days. We know that the state of New Jersey has declared that we do not have to have snow days any longer because we can do virtual instruction. I am of it, as I said in my opening statement, I am of the belief that as one of the joys of childhood, and I think one of the joys of being a teacher, is that having a snow day, it's not the joy of the superintendent to have to be up till 2 o'clock in the morning wondering if it is going to snow, But I guess I would like to get a pulse on how the board feels about keeping the snow days in the calendar or using those as virtual learning days.
And just so we're clear, Dr. Early, so we have 3 days built in. We can use them as snow if the snow comes. If we chose to not do them, we would give them back at some time in the future. If my recollection is typically is around Easter and around Memorial Day would be the option. And we still might have that case if it doesn't snow like it did last year, where there were almost no snow days. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe Mawa already used one of their snow days because they had computer glitches in one of their schools. So you never know what you can use them for.
Right. I agree. I think it's important to have some emergency days in there, whether we call them snow days or something else. And since if we don't use them, they're give backs anyway. I don't see why we wouldn't have them in there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I apologize if this has already been said, but if we exhaust our snow days, I assume we would then resort to e-learning as opposed to adding snow days as we currently do.
Yes, we would switch to remote if we overused our snow days.
And by the same token, we could probably, when we suspect we're going to be giving back snow days, meaning I don't know whether that's giving back or taking away, but when we suspect we're not going to be using snow days, we could probably make that decision earlier now than we usually do, because we have the fallback of e-learning, and that might help people plan a little more.
Yes.
That's correct.
So I recommend that. I think we should keep the emergency days in there. We never know what's going to happen, and we had a boiler problem and things like that. But I do think that we should probably try to provide more clarity to the parents about the calendar than we've been able to do in the past by doing that earlier going forward.
Absolutely. I agree.
Any other thoughts from the board? Sounds like most are in favor of keeping snow days.
Yes.
Snow days.
Keep the
Yes,
snow
keep,
days.
Don't let
keep snow days.
technology ruin snow days. That's my vote.
Right. And it's 2020 and the locusts haven't come yet.
And I think the kids look forward to them, so.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will keep the snow days on the calendar to use if needed. Is there any other business to come before the board? Okay, with that, our next meeting is the first week of December, which I believe is Thursday night, December 3rd. At that meeting, we will honor our 2 board members who will have their last meeting that night for all of their service prior to the end of the year. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Have a good rest of the night, and to all those, a joyful and happy Thanksgiving holiday. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.